Okay, let's see if the live streaming gods like me today. Hang on to your butts. Let me pop onto Discord. There is, I mean, if you, wherever you're watching, YouTube, X, Twitter, whatever, LinkedIn, you can pop onto my Discord, the Azure Terraform Discord channel. I'll post a link. It should hit everywhere. Let me see here. Edit invite link. No limit. Never generate new link. And I'm gonna drop that. Okay, so let me pop into chat. Maybe like I need to go into restreamer chat. Bear with me, everybody. Click, 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 click. How do I get into my current event in Restream? You know, it's not the most intuitive thing, you know. Now my events are gone, or maybe it's a past event. No, it's ongoing. Embed chat. Okay. It's a URL. Okay, I just popped into chat. I need my Discord link. Okay. No, that's not helpful. Okay. Let me just pull up YouTube and I'll throw it into YouTube chat. What the hell, man? How do I get to like there should be like a restream dashboard where I can like view my own event. Like where is my command and control center for my own dang event? You know, like this seems broken. Pretty damn annoying. Yeah, I cannot find a bloody command and control center for my event. So let me just hop onto my channel, throw this into chat. Oh, hey, Chintaka, good to see you. Join me. Feel free to join me on Discord. I just posted this to YouTube. Looks like there's one person there. I'm gonna smash the like button on YouTube. Yeah, I am not big. I'm not big enough to, or small enough. I'm not above liking my own content. How about that? When you're like a baby YouTuber, like what are you gonna do, man? Like you gotta like your own content because, frankly, I get like 10 likes, so like my like is like 10% of all the things, so it's kind of huge. All right, so let's see this on YouTube. I should be live. Oh my God, my live stream is like in my profile at the top of my profile. That's pretty wicked. There we go. Okay. Let me see. I don't know if I see anybody in here. I'll post the Discord chat in there. Looks like, oh, there's two others in here. Who's in LinkedIn? We got Patrick Thorne. Hello. Well, actually, I can't tell if they're reactions or if they're actually in here. Anyways, pop over to Discord, and you know this is happening as it like live, right? So I'm going to create a channel called Live Stream. It's going to be a text channel, okay? Like not a voice channel. We're not to that level yet, but pop over to my live stream Discord channel. and chat with me there, because Restream just does not bloody give me a command and control center, so it's kind of irritating. So I'm going to have difficulty responding to chat if you're in there on LinkedIn or YouTube or Twitter or wherever. So please do that. Let me repost this. I don't think I reposted this on Azure Terraformer actually, so I'm going to do that right now so people know they're over there. Okay, anyways, so this weekend was a really nice code and coffee weekend. I got, my stock full right here, drinking. I got two rounds of coffee in front of me, so we got at least, an hour and a half, of coding that we're going to be doing. But yesterday, great code and coffee. Met some new folks, which was exciting. Saw some old faces, good old friends, that are kind of the regulars. And, talked to a gentleman that I bumped into at the AWS meetup. Yes, I go to the AWS meetup, even though I work for Microsoft. Why? Because it keeps you well-rounded, like you get out there, you see what other people are doing on other platforms, the approaches, the techniques, they're still applicable on whatever cloud whatever your cloud of choice may be. You just have to, figure out the translation in your own head, right? So I find it very useful to attend other related or tangential meetups, which is why I go to the AWS meetup. And there's a lot of really nice people there, like Angelo. Met Angelo, met another AWS guy, Brad. Yeah, Brad, I think it's Brad Knowles, and he's an OG .NET guy, just like me. He's found himself working at AWS now, and I met him through the AWS meetup, and yeah, it's amazing. Like, you just keep yourself open, don't just box yourself in and well, I only do this, and it'll keep you on your toes and help you meet some pretty cool people. So and anyways, I met I think it's Tejas. I really apologize if I mispronounce that name, but it's either Tejas or Tejas. And really smart guy. He's doing C#.NET and more. It sounded like he wasn't super happy with it, so maybe he's doing like more maintenance work or more like vanilla, kind of maybe 10, 15 years dated kind of client server dev or web dev. And he's kind of interested in like how he could accelerate his career. And he told me about a little POC that he's working on with his buddy using AWS, Lambda, ALB. And, we talked through that architecture, and that was a lot of fun. It was kind of fun just hearing the use case and, how they currently design the POC. Excuse me. And, how it's currently set up for a single user with a single profile, and how they, had some processing agent. I won't go into the business case aspect of it, but how there's a processor that like processes data that gets loaded in kind of live from some other place, and then they have this processor that chunks it up, and they're like, well, we got the data ingestion built with ALB and Lambda, and it's kind of like going out and grabbing the data, populating it in a time series database. But we have this like business logic that runs. And we really don't think we can run that in Lambda because reasons, like basically the way it's currently designed, it's a batch process, and it's designed to work over a very large, scale set of data set. And due to the nature of the design, they kind of had this horse blinders syndrome, which we've all been there, right? I've been there many times. And, it's like, well, this is the way we designed it. Like, what is the right hosting target on the cloud? And due to the design decisions that they already made that are kind of built into their assumption matrix, they're like, well, it really can only run on an EC2 instance because it's a really long running process. We like Lambda because they're cool, but we have to run it on an EC2 instance. And they didn't really think about like, well, why? You know, that's inherent in our design. If we rethink our design, which fundamentally starts with the unit of work, you know, what is the unit of work that this business logic agent or whatever is going to be processing on? Is it the entire universe, or is it an individual user profile, or is it an individual piece of recommendation set? Their business logic makes recommendations. Is it an individual recommendation that they want to generate? And so I walked them through like, okay, if you can break down that unit of work and parallelize it, then you maybe don't need this master control, this monolithic master control program that's super long running that has to process the universe, has to boil the ocean, right? And if you can, the deeper you split that up, the smaller you split that up, the more horizontally scalable you're going to be able to get, and the more options you have in terms of hosting. And you know, maybe you could get it back into an individual Lambda, and you just spin up a Lambda that's event based, that you kind of, you know, queue these up together, where you kind of fan out the individual, like, okay, maybe at a certain time of day we process these users, and you know, we detect, there's a service that detects if we need to make recommendations for a particular user within a particular context. And every time we decide we want to make a recommendation, we spawn a new message, and that fans out from there. And then you're really kind of taking this huge boulder and breaking it down into smaller rocks, into pebbles, and then into sand, little bits of sand. And then those bits of sand can then be processed kind of independently by smaller little services, like maybe Lambda function or something like that. So that was fun, you know, kind of working through that with him. It's a good time. Then I met this guy named Eric, who came up to me, never met him before. And he was doing work with Azure Data Factory, ADF. You know, I love acronyms. And I just happened to have experience working with Azure Data Factory before. And he was like, well, I'm trying to use Azure Data Factory with a REST API. And, you know, he's like, this doesn't feel right. You know, should I be doing this? And I was like, that's a great question. And so I asked him a couple more probing questions. I'm like, okay, so are you getting data? Are you getting other pieces of data from other data sources? He's like, yes. I'm like, okay, so what types of data sources are those? Are those all REST APIs? Or are they like SQL DB, MongoDB, blah, 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 whatever? And he's like, well, yeah, they are. I'm like, okay, so now what are you doing with that data? Are you kind of like staying in your lane? Are they individual silos of data ETL that you're doing, where you're like grabbing the data from Mongo, pulling it in, dropping it someplace, grabbing the data from SQL DB, pulling it in, dropping it in a different place, calling the REST API, pulling it in, dropping it in yet another different place? Or are you kind of like pulling all these 3 or n pieces of data and then like jamming them together? And the example I gave, I love this example. It's like Data Factory, you know, it's kind of like playing with Play-Doh, right? It's like, and if you have kids, you know what I'm talking about, or if you were a kid once, that within the last 80 years, you've played with Play-Doh before. There's different colors of Play-Doh, red, green, blue. And then there's little tools that you use, like that you push the Play-Doh through to kind of make different like shapes of the Play-Doh. Like there's a tube that like you smush a clump of Play-Doh through and it comes out like a cylinder, or it comes out like a star, or it comes out like a little spaghetti strips and things like that. And Data Factory, basically that's what it's doing, right? It's like you've got all these different sources of data, and those are just little canisters of Play-Doh, and you're sucking up all that Play-Doh, and you it's choose your own adventure, right? Like you can choose if you want to just suck the Play-Doh up and just dump it, as is, as a big clump, or if you want to pull it through, like push it through this like cylinder, and just change the shape a little bit, or also if you want to take the red and blue, smush it together, and make purple or whatever, and then like make it into a star shaped or spaghetti, and so I asked him, like, are the different Play-Doh, red, green, blue, like getting smushed all up together, or are they like separate? And he's like, excuse me. He's like, no, they're kind of separate. And so then I was like, well, okay. Then you're really not using the main like powerhouse that ADF is for this case, right? Then I said the last thing that I would probably think about would be ADF also has this really nice operator layer, right? Where it's like, it's got this slick user interface, has, status indicators of like, is it processing green, yellow, red, kind of stoplight status indicators, like healthy, not healthy, broken, not broken. And oftentimes when you use ADF at scale, you might have devs or data people, data engineers, that are designing the data workflows. And then you have operators that are monitoring these workflows and like seeing if they're all healthy. So if he was in an organization where they had invested in like this operator layer and basically all data coming in, you've got an ops team that's like monitoring the data coming in, making sure the data is healthy and it's part of their normal flow, then, even though technically it doesn't make a lot of sense to pipe it into Azure Data Factory, it conforms with an existing operating model. And if you decide to, dev outside of that, then you're going to cause additional friction, right? And, those operators are going to be like, Eric wrote this crazy function for anytime we did a REST API. I have no freaking clue what this thing does. It's like off in, Candyland, and I don't know what it does. So I have really no idea how if it's healthy or broken. It's just doing its own thing, right? And so now you've kind of broken your operating model by picking the right tool. Whereas you could kind of pick the best of both worlds with Azure Data Factory. If you have that investment in that operations layer, you can have an Azure Data Factory. You can have that Data Factory pipeline call an Azure function, so you can still do your Python code. I think Eric wanted to write it in Python. He's like, why don't we just write this in Python? I'm like, yeah, write in Python, put an Azure function, have your Azure Data Factory call the function, then all your operator peoples are all happy, and they move on with their lives. You move on with your life. You have, code that's like maintainable and sane, because like he was having trouble processing like this nasty JSON that was coming in. And, the Azure Data Factory is kind of designed for kind of conforming or uniform data structures. And so whenever you have really wacky data structures, Azure Data Factory gets a little unhappy. Anyways, so that was a good conversation with Eric. Yeah, cool guy. Again, if you're joining me, I popped links to the Discord in LinkedIn, links in LinkedIn chat. So you can pop into Discord and head over to the live stream channel on the Azure Terraformer Discord. Likewise, if you are in YouTube land, I pop that in chat, so you can head over there and chat with me via Discord. I've got all the windows open, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to monitor them all. So this will help keep me sane, just hanging out in Discord and all that stuff. So let me log into my Ubuntu VM here. I always... Did I get the password right? No, I didn't. Oh my Lord. It's like singing in front of an audience, like doing a password in front of an audience is, it's way harder than it looks. Like I have this thing memorized, but when I know somebody's watching me type it in, it's, well, of course you can't see me typing it in, but it's like, then I forget which character is capital and which character is lowercase, and yeah, there we go. So, all right, I have a Stream Deck. Yeah, thanks to Scott Hanselman, I learned about this Stream Deck thing. Actually, somebody pointed out Stream Deck, but Scott Hanselman made a comment about the Stream Deck that he was using, and I was like, oh yeah, that looks cool. It's got knobs. I like knobs. So I was like, yeah, man, I can get behind a Stream Deck with knobs, because most Stream Decks have buttons. So I have the one with, it's got like 8 buttons and knobs, so I can control volume and stuff like that. So it's like, heck yeah, I'm totally on board. So I've got a button that puts up the wait screen and mutes the audio, I think. I got a button that shows this, lovely, beautiful picture that you see before yourself right now. And then I got a button that flips over the screen. So let's try and smash that button right here as I get really close to the mic. Hello, everybody. How's it going? Is that working? Let's see. I've had so much trouble live streaming. It's ridiculous. So much trouble live streaming. I've like lost faith that I can do anything right on live streaming. So I'm seeing it on YouTube. And audio seems to be coming through on YouTube. Okay. See, guys, I'm just super paranoid because, before the holidays, I tried live streaming, and dear God. First, I did that debacle at Code and Coffee, where I tried to live stream my talk at Code and Coffee, and I had like this double echo, and it wasn't even double echo. It was like exponential echo. I loop back. I think that's what it's called. And it was terrible. And there were some people that hung on to listen to the talk. I'm like, I salute you. I absolutely salute you. Because I went back to listen to that audio, and I tried to fix it with audio tools, and I was just like, no. I pulled my hair out, and I gave up, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to recover this. It's just gone, which is really sad, because there's, I did give the talk later at V Brown Bag, Chris Williams' channel. But it was really sad because at Code and Coffee, there was really great audience engagement, and I got heckled a few times. It was really fun. So yeah, I don't know. Another fun topic. I sometimes get into arguments with internet strangers on the inner tubes, and I got into it with somebody who made a comment that Terraform is a compiler. That's their evidence, their foundation for their argument. And because Terraform's a compiler, it's 2023. It's kind of silly to think that somebody would be going back to paying for compilers these days, right? And you don't pay for Javac, Java-C. You don't pay for GCC, right? Why would you pay for Terraform? It's a compiler, right? And when you have an argument, right? You have an argument. You have a thesis. Your thesis, in this case, the thesis is Terraform should be free because all compilers are free, right? Or most compilers are free. And having free compilers benefits the community, right? So therefore, because Terraform is a compiler, it should be free. That's your thesis. Now, your thesis is based on evidence that, you're assuming that Terraform is a compiler, right? And this metaphor works for you. And so in order for that to be true, in order for your thesis that, because compilers are, it's good for communities that compilers are free, then Terraform should be free. You have to prove or give evidence that Terraform is a compiler. And so typically in an argument, if you could agree with the thesis or you could disagree with the thesis, right? Doesn't matter. But at the same time, you could question the evidence, right? And say, well, is the evidence supporting your thesis? And so in this case, like I just, let's forget about the, what the thesis is, like that Terraform should be free because it's a compiler, right? Let's just think about it was an interesting piece of evidence that he asserted. Is Terraform a compiler? And so I just asserted okay, I can kind of see your point. Like Terraform compiles plans, or it can compile plans, which a plan is kind of like a compiled artifact, like a Java bytecode, what a Java file gets compiled. I forget what kind of file it gets compiled into. It was so long ago. But like in .NET, you got C# files and they compile into DLLs, right? So I get that. Like compilers produce artifacts. However, Terraform has this function, which I acknowledge, but it also has this function of executing that artifact. And if you think about it, what other piece of software has the function of executing compiled artifacts? So if we like embrace this, like this evidence, which I think is good evidence that, other compilers produce compiled artifacts. They take code and they produce compiled artifacts. That's what it looks like to be a compiler. Terraform has those attributes, but Terraform also has other attributes such as taking that compiled artifact and executing it, right, to reach some other end. And so you got to think like, well, what other piece of software has that type of attribute? And I just, being very simple minded, it seems like an operating system, right, would have that, or a runtime more specifically, right? In the case of Java, you have a Java runtime. In .NET, you have a .NET runtime. The runtime, in that case, takes that compiled artifact and executes it on the operating system. Ultimately, the .NET runtime, the Java runtime is really just transforming, the compiled bytecode or IL code, intermediate language, into native operations on the OS, right? But really you could really say what's running the application or that compiled artifact is the operating system itself, right? The .NET runtime cannot run a .NET application. The Java runtime cannot run an application without the operating system. So ultimately, the operating system is really what's running it. So then, if we say that, well, maybe the assertion that Terraform is a compiler is an incomplete metaphor, right? At the very least, it's incomplete because Terraform can do much more than that. Then our thesis that because it's a compiler means it should be free is not grounded on a solid foundation. And that was my point. And this gentleman, we're going to try the camera. Go back to the camera. And this gentleman, rather than responding to my critiques, he basically said no, I never said that. Said that, right? I assume he meant he never said that Terraform is a compiler, which is kind of strange because clearly he did. And you clearly don't understand what I'm saying. And our worldviews are so different that I can't even have a productive conversation with you. And so when you encounter, somebody like this, like whatever you're discussing, and as software engineers, as software architects, as technologists, we often have to have arguments. And that doesn't mean we have to fight each other, like punch each other in the face and be mean and nasty and pull hair and, I don't know, spit on each other, but that's not what an argument is. An argument is what two rational people have when, you're trying to sort out the truth. A fight is when, you're really just out for blood. You want to punch somebody in the face, right? And because you don't like the way they looked at you. I don't know. So it's important that we as software engineers and software developers, software architects, as anybody that's trying to sort out the truth or the right, the best approach, right? Because there are many approaches, right? There are many ways of doing things in software, but we have to come together. What's the best approach for us now? That's the quintessential question whenever you get into software design questions or infrastructure design questions. What is the best approach for us now? What is the best approach based on what we know of the future, such that we can take steps now to minimize effort later, right? And how do we strike a balance between, the future potential, requirements and the current requirements of today? These are very, very common questions that come up every design session, or they should be. And you often have to debate, right? I think this, you think this, let's find the right solution, let's find the best solution, and let's agree on it and move forward. And so you're inevitably going to run into folks that don't want to listen, and they'll try and sabotage the argument, just get out of it. And in this case, the gentleman basically was using a red herring, which is something that's completely unrelated to the argument. He didn't address my criticism. He just said, our worldviews are different, so we can't continue this debate, right? Our worldviews have nothing to do with whether Terraform is a compiler, is an accurate metaphor or not, right? So in that sense, it's a red herring. Okay, now I have to discuss our worldviews to decide if we can have a productive conversation about this. What does that have to do with it? It doesn't. It's kind of borderline ad hominem, but you will encounter folks like this, and it's unfortunate, but you either have to decide, do you want to wrestle with that pig, or do you want to try and help them lead back to the case? On the internet, you got many options. In the professional setting, you can't just torch them, right? So you might want to find ways to make the conversation more productive. And in that case, it's well, I understand we might see things differently, but let's focus on, this key decision that we're trying to make. Our worldviews aside, I think we can discuss this point. I'd like to hear your feedback on my suggestions on this topic, and let's see how we can move forward, right? So, interesting stuff happened this week and this weekend. Just thought I'd share with that. Anyways, I'm not sure if I see anybody in the Discord. So sad. You guys might be stuffed in YouTube. I see Abjit, and he says, how to secure a state file in Azure, where we place that, storage account, any container. So that's a good question, Abjit. I often use Azure storage accounts as a backend for my Terraform, and I put state files in Azure storage. The way that you secure that storage account is, using Azure RBAC, right? So when you configure Terraform to talk to your backend, you don't necessarily have to use the same credentials that you use to provision your infrastructure, right? So that's an important caveat to make sure that you're aware of. Oftentimes it's very easy, and even on my channel, because I'm just me doing my thing, I often just use the same service principal, credential, whatever, to establish connectivity to the Terraform backend, as well as to provision the environment. But they don't have to be the same. And so in an enterprise environment, what you'll often see, is your state files being set up in a different resource group, maybe even a different subscription. And then your access to that particular backend is going to be very limited as a developer, and so maybe you won't be able to provision or access production state files without a break glass kind of activity in order to get access to it, like privileged access management. Like you hit the PIM button, you get temporary credentials so that you can run a Terraform plan. But you're probably going to have a back end for your production environments, and then you're going to have a back end for your non-prod, or you might have many backends. Storage accounts are free, essentially, right? And state files are not, gratuitously large, right? So it's really just a matter of like what the operating overhead is of maintaining all these storage accounts everywhere, right? But typically that's going to be, you got non-prod state and you got prod state, and there's an RBAC boundary within Azure around the resource group, around the subscription, around the storage account, within the prod that's storing the prod state. And then the RBAC boundary around the non-prod state is different. And so in the non-prod state, you would probably, as a developer, expect to be able to do things like run a Terraform plan locally, right? Using your own interactive credentials, AZ login. Whereas in prod, you would not have that same expectation without some break glass type of activity. So I hope that helps answer your question, Abhijit. And I might have to pop over to LinkedIn. Should I? I think I should. Let's see what's going on in LinkedIn. I went on a long tangent. Yeah, no chat in LinkedIn. Okay. So yeah, let's do what we came here to do. It's 10:44. Wow, spent a lot of time just catching up. So let's switch back over to my screen, and let's get going. So I have my source code for I've been working with this .NET Reliable app here, and this is it. And so with this .NET Reliable app, it started off without Terraform, and they use, and if you go back to my other live streams, eventually I'm going to probably wrap this up into episodes and things like that. But you go back to my other live streams, and they use this Azure CLI, the Azure Developer CLI, to provision this stuff. And that uses Bicep, which I think I stuffed into a folder somewhere. Yeah. So they have some Bicep in here. And basically, I've kind of reverse engineered it. And instead of using Azure App Service like they do in the Bicep, let me go over there. Whoa. Yeah, they use Azure App Service. And so instead of using Azure App Service, I've decided that I wanted to make this containerized and run it in an AKS cluster, which App Service is kind of like a clustering technology in the sense that you have an app service plan and you have a bunch of nodes that are within that app service plan. And then you can deploy a whole bunch of different web apps or APIs or services or functions deployed, or containers, now to that app service plan. And they all share that underlying infrastructure. And app service basically is the one that's orchestrating the health of all these different apps that are deployed to it. So in a sense, it's pretty much like Kubernetes, right? But you don't have as much control like with Kubernetes like you have with Kubernetes. So I thought it would be fun, to kind of delve into this and look at how can we convert Bicep to Terraform, and kind of give back to this, publicly, this public repo that's out there on the inner tubes that Microsoft has published. I think it's the DevDiv organization that publishes it and maintains it. So you'll have more options. You don't have to use Bicep. You can use Terraform. B, we will give another option, like you don't have to run this app in Azure App Service. You can run it on AKS, and maybe we'll see how that works. Excuse me. And then C, lastly, it's kind of like, well, we've got this .NET app, and we currently deploy it using Azure App Service, and Azure App Service does not require us to containerize it. So what does it look like if I'm deciding to take an existing .NET app and containerize it? What does the effort look like for that? So that's kind of the genesis of this little series. So let me I do need to get into dev containers, but let me pop into terminal here and let me go to these locations here, copy relative path. I just need to check out like what's in this location. So that's interesting. I don't have shared in here. Let me open a new terminal. So I do have my debug.sh. Let me just do a plan and see what's out there, because it was a long holiday and it's been a while since I picked this back up, but I'm going to try and do this every Sunday. Same time, same place. So we're going to get back into this, and I'm not going to destabilize my, I'm not going to destabilize my dev environment. So what do we got here? So this shared thing doesn't exist anymore. So I'm going to do something because I need to switch out. I'm going to go back to my pretty face here because I need to do something in the code real fast like. And I don't want you guys to see it. Because I think I need to provision like a thing for the container registry, which is very sad. And actually, I think I'm okay. Like I don't think there's any secrets there, so I'm going to switch back to the screen. But basically, I checked out my shared, and shared doesn't exist. And shared provisions the container registry. I might have deleted that yesterday when I was at Code and Coffee, because I ran on apply and it just borked. It drop created some stuff, so that was kind of sad. Again, don't just run apply auto approve. It's a bad thing. So I need to, what's going on here? I need to change mod to execute my bash script so that I can use my debug bash script to run commands here, basically. Now, if we look at this, rgls shared dev. So ls shared. So I think in my shared environment, I need to have this present, right? So my plan over here is probably bad because I don't want ls infra dev from my shared repo. I want my shared repo to what happened here? It's my bad. Oh yeah. So because I use the different application name, like let me just clean this. So I haven't run an apply, so I'm well with. I'm well within my right to just ditch it. Because it puts a bunch of stuff in there, and it's like, okay, well, you're looking at ls shared. It should be going to the state file, which I should have. This should be out in my my development subscription. Yeah, RG Terraform state. Here's my little storage account, 67875. So we're good. Yeah. So I think I'm pretty good here. Let's run this. I don't think. Let me check the resource groups. Yeah, I must have deleted it somehow. I don't know how that happened. So I'm going to create my container registry. Unfortunately, that means I got to push the Docker images again. Womp womp. You know what might have happened? Over the holidays, I did a little sanity check on my budget for my subscription, and I found out that over the last year on Azure Terraformer, I spent $2,000 on my Azure subscription, and I'm just leaving crap open or like out there. And I probably just went through a delete frenzy. I'm just like delete. Like, holy crap! Like, let's get this under control, and I need to do a better job at deleting stuff. So what's probably going to happen is after this episode, I'm probably going to delete this, and I'll just remember to make sure I do like a pre live stream setup where I, apply this right before the live stream, and then push the images so I don't have to deal with this again. Now, let me check, because I thought out in GitHub. Oh, all right, I got to sign into GitHub. Mobile app. Yes, approve. Should be approved. Okay, yeah. We're back to the screen. Oh, Stream Deck, man. There we go. I didn't know what I was missing. All right, so let me go to my repos. This live stream guy. Yes. Live stream. I should have some actions in here, which Docker. So I have these Docker pipelines that push to the correct location. And I use live stream shared, which that should run. I believe this thing is going to run a Terraform apply and get the output for the Docker image. Yeah. So we're basically going to run Terraform apply. We're going to get the ls shared dev, which is probably what I'm re-provisioning right now. ACR ls shared dev. Yep. So to push the images, I might just be able to reuse this pipeline, and just run this again, because it's using the same workspace and it's using the same. Oh, dang it. I picked the wrong environment. It's going to bork, but I should cancel the workflow. I want to get more sophisticated in like how I chain GitHub actions together, like with webhooks and stuff like that. I think that would be fun. What branch am I on? Add Terraform. So like when I execute this, I should probably run it on the add Terraform branch. Yeah, makes sense to me. And I want to run on shared infra because that's where my ACR is. There won't be an ACR on the regular infra. So shared infra for containers, at least in this case, I'm going to roll I'm going to roll a cluster inside the apps infra, which you don't have to do technically. An AKS cluster is often itself part of the shared infrastructure in addition to the ACR that you push images to. But in this case, oh no, it broke. Okay. That doesn't look like a very significant change, to be honest. So maybe Docker build web. Refresh only. So I think the fact that I'm using refresh only means it's not going to actually make any changes, but I'm not exactly sure why it would be upset about the tags. I don't want to change this pipeline to be to not be refresh only and like auto approve, because like when I'm just pushing a Docker image, I don't want to like necessarily make changes to stuff. So I'm not quite sure why the tags, an empty tags collection would be there. Maybe I just see it's got no changes there. And let's look at the config ls shared dev tf state, same state file, refresh only, secrets. Objects have changed outside of Terraform. The tags have turned into something else, which that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, maybe part of my FinOps journey on this channel, I should be a good little boy and start actually using tags. That might be a good thing, so that I can, track this stuff. I do want to develop on this channel like a ephemeral workspace cleaner upper thing. Like I was thinking about calling it like AZ, what do you say? AZ Hall. I was going to call it AZ Hall Monitor. What do you think? Do you like AZ Hall Monitor? Because I'm basically thinking of like an Azure function that goes off. Yeah, it's still pissed off. Oh, the login failed. Interesting. Unauthorized. Interesting. So now the pipeline is clearly operating under this thing. So no, environments. So the shared guy is operating under this. Maybe. So my environments clearly only have an app name and environment name, and then a Terraform working directory. So I think my credential, I'm actually sharing across the environments. So these are secrets. So there's my Terraform ARM client secret, the Terraform registry password, and now I should see Terraform ARM client ID, our Azure registry username. So who is this? This has got to be some user in my Entra ID directory. Got to remember to call it that. App registrations. Let's find you. Who are you? Aha! Docker dev. So this guy needs to have access to push images to this container registry. So do I not have ACR pushers, var container registry pushers? So, what happened here? So that's the application ID. So it must be the object ID. Let me check. So the object ID for this guy is 8 alpha 4 delta. And I got 466A3 whatever. So that's clearly different. Now, I don't like using GUIDs here, right? So This is not a happy thing for me. I need to figure out like what these guys are. This guy should be my Docker dev. Now this guy, who the hell is this guy? Let's go look. Who are you? Probably Terraform. Oh, nothing. So I think this is just a case of maybe I got the wrong identity in there. Oh, yeah. Let me check Terraform dev. It's because no, it's Echo 907. So this is like, oh no, yeah. This is wrong. This is just not the object ID that we want, right? So, okay. Now, if I run an apply here, this should recreate the role assignment, which will allow my GitHub action to push that Docker image to the ACR, which, you know, we're coming up on time, and this is probably going to be the last thing that we do. But yeah, we spent some time talking about code and coffee yesterday, which was a good time, and spent some time talking about how to make good arguments and how not to be a douche. And just like not be able to defend your own arguments in a rational debate. Oh, crap. Principles of type application cannot be validly used in role assignments. So I think what I need to do is Docker dev. I have to go up to the enterprise app, and then I have to get its object ID. 8 alpha 4 delta. No, that's the same one. There we go. Object 466 alpha 3. Was that what it was originally? Yeah. 466 alpha 3. Oh, I remember. It's all coming back to me now. It's all coming back to me now. The very first episode we ran into this. It's an Azure RBAC propagation delay. That's what's happening. The service principal was granted pusher access to this ACR. It's in the database. It's not, because it's an asynchronous operation, it's not shown up yet. So yeah, this happened the very first time I live streamed this topic. And I'm retreading that ground, folks. That's exciting. So now I deleted it because I thought I had the wrong one in there. And I should probably change this to like enterprise. Must be enterprise application object IDs. There we go. And now that it's been created again, now I have to wait for it to propagate, and that could take some time. So sad business, but it is what it is. At least now the shared environment's up, and we are able to do a refresh only to pull that ACR and pipe that into the Docker build step to go push the Docker image. So as soon as the credential that we use to authenticate to ACR is granted access, we'll be in business. We'll be in business. Nope, not yet. Anyways, let's look, while we're waiting on that, let's look at what else we got. I could still provision the infra. So now let me try and run a plan over it. No, see, I love the multi-terminal thing in VS Code when working with kind of layered Terraform workspaces. I've got my shared infra here. I can pop back in here, just run apply. I got my applications infra in here. I can pop back in here and I can run a plan. I got the working directories all set up, and they've got different history, so it makes it very easy to kind of manage like a kind of layered workspace setup. There we go. So the ACR is happy. We're actually not dependent on the RBAC propagation that we are in the other place, but we are dependent. But because basically what's happening is the ACR exists, we only need to grant our kubelet identity pull access to the ACR. And so when we set that up, the role assignment's completely independent on the fact that we can't push images to it, which is fine. Let me check chat. Yeah. Abhijit says, thank you for explaining, sir. No problem. And let me know if you have any other questions. And Abhijit, I welcome you to join the Azure Terraformer Discord using that link that I posted in YouTube. And you can join me and chat in the live stream channel under the Azure Terraformer Discord. So I welcome you in there. And we are still provisioning all the things. Setting up Redis, setting up SQL Server. Yeah, Redis can take a few minutes. We can go out and look at what's getting constructed out here. LS infra dev. LS is like live stream. It's kind of a dumb name. I get it, but. And got a VNet, got a storage account, SQL Database, Redis, which they show up in the portal, but they're not done being provisioned yet, as we can see. We got managed identity for our cluster, which this managed identity is being used to create the underlying infrastructure that's managed by AKS. So this managed identity actually needs quite a bit of subscription level permissions, because it has to create a resource group, create VM scale sets, VMs, NICs, disks, like all the things that make up the underlying infrastructure of our AKS cluster. And then kubelet, this is one authentication mechanism that we can use. It's not the greatest, but it works, where we grant basically the pods. Every pod on our cluster will use this identity, and we will grant our pods various access to Redis, SQL DB, Key Vault, so that we can go grab data, read, write to it, communicate to it, using this managed identity. And in future episodes, we'll probably improve this to use workload identity, so that we're not just granting all pods the same access. We can give different pods different access to different things, which is the way. This is the way. I saw somebody pop into the live stream chat. Maz, are you trying to say hello? Are you too shy? Still waiting on my SQL DB there. Ooh, Moz is back. Hi, Moz. You are the first person to join the Discord live chat. Congrats. Thank you, man. Thanks for joining. Glad you're here. So, Maz, I'm rebooting this Brownfield container series after. Oh yeah. If you have a question, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Sure, man. Just don't embarrass me, okay? Hey, George is in here too. What's up, George? So Maz says, I'm currently working. Oh, George, you've been lurking back there, man. See, why'd you surrender the honor of like to Maz to have him be have the first post, man? You gotta be it's like the internet thing. You gotta be like first post, and then you just then you can lurk, right? All right. So Maz says, I'm currently working on a Terraform project where I need to manage resources across multiple Azure subscriptions. Okay. Yes. So say we all. Very, very common thing. To achieve this, I'm considering defining multiple provider blocks in my Terraform configuration, each corresponding to a different Azure subscription. My plan is to store the subscription IDs in terraform.tfrs and reference them. Dan Kitch, what's up? Yes, Dan Kitch, my dude. Store subscription IDs in terraform.tfrs file and reference them in the provider configurations. This is the correct approach. So I did a video on, is my subscription a secret? Because I think somebody was like, I don't know, like InfoSec or somebody was like spanking them for putting subscription IDs in their source code files or something like that. And it's like, yes, that's okay. You can put your subscription IDs in your source code files. Let me thumbs up Dan Kitch. It works well, yes. And it so as a technical practice, like it's totally okay to do. Totally okay. Because the subscription ID is not like sensitive like a password. It's like a mailing address, right? So it's kind of like your home address. It's not the keys to your house, so nobody can like just walk in your front door, but like they kind of know where you live. So you probably don't want to like post that out on the public interwebs. But if you have a private Git repository in your private enterprise, like you can do that. That's fine. Just be aware that it's there, and you might want to call it out, like that. I don't know. Put it in the documentation in that file or in the readme.md. If your organization makes practice of like also publishing stuff on the interwebs, I've seen like government organizations like try and take advantage of. I think somebody wanted me to code review this huge mono repo for like the department, some government entity within the UK. And they sent me like, and it's like thousands of lines of code. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to code review this entire government agency's like Terraform code base. But this government agency like used GitHub Actions for free because all of their code was in a public GitHub repo. And technically like that doesn't, like if you're writing Terraform modules the right way, you're not going to be divulging, internal information, right? However, like there are like security guys will be like, okay, if this is on the public internet, you probably don't want to put in even private IP addresses or subscription IDs, because that is more information that a potential bad actor will have if they do get access to your like get past, you know, the network boundary, right? Or they get a credential, then they have more information so that they can move like laterally within the organization. So less information for bad actors, the better. But if it's in a private repo, you're probably fine. Now, I would also say building multi-provider based Terraform modules is not a super great path to high code reusability, if that makes sense. So you might want to think about the topology of your module graph, if that makes sense. Like, what should be the root module? And then how can you shield submodules from the complexity of being aware of multiple provider definitions, right? So if you can scope a module to, as soon as you can scope a module to an individual provider declaration, do it. Because the complexity of managing different provider aliases within a single module it's laborious. It's very laborious, right? So, but it's very common in like a root module. You will likely have multiple provider blocks in that root module, especially for like these cross organizational code bases. Policy as code is a great example of that. Like when you're working with management groups, you know, and applying policy at the management group or at the subscription level, you're going to have like a root module that has fingers in multiple pies. But it's when as soon as you like find a way to make code reusable, you want to encapsulate that and scope it as narrow as possible, like to a single subscription. So think about that. I haven't seen your code. You know, if it's something that you can share, like a GitHub URL to, happy to do a code review. Of course, code ninjas like Dan Kitch get first in line. So Dan, haven't seen a code review from you recently. So let me know if there's anything you want me to look at. Yeah, happy to do code reviews. Again, first come, first serve. Code ninjas get first priority. And probably a little bit more attention, a little bit faster turnaround time, because I do have a full-time job, and just other stuff going on. Oh, my VM like shut down. Oh crap, my cluster failed. What happened? Let's read this error message. The user assigned managed identity must be granted managed identity operator role to assign the kubelet identity. Man, I'm pretty sure I have this role. Maybe I don't have a depends on clause. Managed identity operator. Yeah. Container, so this is one of those cases where I'm thinking that I have a first time apply failure, and there's a race condition where to provision my cluster, my cluster is actually dependent on this role assignment being there. But so basically I've got this user assigned identity. So the cluster is obviously dependent on the user assigned identity because I'm setting this cluster kubelet on the AKS cluster. But then the cluster principal needs to have this permission in order to grant permission. Let me read this. Yeah, so it's going to create a role assignment create for the kubelet identity. Oh, role assignment to the kubelet identity. So maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I didn't read the error message. That this totally not cryptic error message. Am I right? Like, so I think if I reread this, sometimes you just got to reread these messages like a couple of times. The cluster using user-assigned managed identity must be granted managed identity operator role to the to assign kubelet identity. Yes. So I think my original assessment is accurate. I think this is the scrolly wheel in my Linux VM is very frustrating. So I think to fix this, where's my cluster? I need a depends on my cluster. I'm going to put it at the bottom. And it's actually dependent on this role assignment. And it's for the cluster identity operator. Yeah. Now, the funny thing is, this is one of those second time apply things that are going to work. MR. What's up, MR? So MR, welcome. And right now, I think it's using internal load balancers, and the services are going to use cluster IP. But I think I might add App Gateway in the future. It is a public cluster, and that's because I don't have a private VNet with my GitHub Actions. I could set up a VPN gateway. Maybe I'll do that. What do you think? What do you guys think I should do? Do you think I should make this cluster private and use an app gateway in front of it? Or because that's going to require me to have a VPN gateway in order to connect to the Kubernetes control plane. MR, so by that response, very cool. Does that mean you want app gateway, or do you want it to be, are you okay with it being a public cluster for now? I kind of feel like because I want to containerize the .NET app, maybe the app gateway I'll defer to a later like refactoring session. Okay. Public. Okay. So you're cool with public. Okay, good. So yeah, because that'll allow me to kind of focus on the containerization of the .NET app. And then I can layer on app gateway. Now, guys, I do have a HashiConf. No. It's not HashiConf. I have a HashiTalk. Okay, I got approved for a HashiTalk. And I'm giving a HashiTalk on AKS. And in the AKS HashiTalk 2024, I think it's going to be on February 15th. Thank you, MR. I appreciate that. I like to keep things simple too. But in my HashiTalk, I will be doing an app gateway. So look for that HashiTalk coming up February 15th. Thank you. Appreciate it. And it's like best practices in AKS and stuff like that. So from my opinion, of course, I'm not speaking in any official capacity. I'm just like, this is what I think you should do. How you should provision AKS and stuff like that. So I'll be setting up AKS, and we'll be using App Gateway. I haven't decided if I'm going to use like the Nginx ingress controller, or if I'll use like the App Gateway ingress controller. I'm kind of leaning towards the App Gateway ingress controller because I feel like that is kind of the canon like best practice. But I know a lot of people love Nginx, so but it might be fun to use App Gateway. I see. App Gateway just is a big ball of yarn. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a bit cumbersome. Yeah, AGIC. Yeah, that's right, MR. So I don't know. There's different camps. Like there's Nginx camps, and then there's the AG. Like you got to go all native all the way, you know. But yeah, and we'll be using workload identity with the federated identity credential. And I'm planning on doing I'm going to use both the Azure RM provider, obviously, and the Azure AD provider, and kind of laying down the cluster with its federated credential in Entra and the AKS cluster on Azure. And I'm kind of debating whether I should just set up GitOps, like using Flux or Argo CD, or if I should play around with the Kubernetes provider for Terraform, right? Because the Kubernetes provider for Terraform, I think, is interesting because it does allow you to deploy things like the federated identity credential, which requires like a managed ID, app ID, which you don't know until into times of provision. So stuff like that you can't do GitOps really, because it's dependent on the Azure resources that are being provisioned. So I was kind of thinking maybe I just lay down kind of the foundation, you know, Key Vault secret class, secret provider class, the federated credential for the workload identity, using maybe the Terraform Kubernetes provider, and then any application deployment on top of that would be done using like GitOps. But that's what I got in my head. I gotta get it out of there. But anyways, see a couple of folks tapping. What do you guys think of that? Tappa. And my VM keeps going to sleep on me because I keep monologuing. It's kind of silly. Did this work? It's gonna work because the role assignment's already there. So again, this is like that situation where it's a first time apply failure. The second time apply, it's going to be successful. But because there's a race condition between that role assignment being created. Ooh, what am I destroying? Oh, I've got some rando thing here. A local sensitive file. Oh yeah, okay. I'm just outputting my kubeconfig. So I want to make sure my kubeconfig's updated all the time. That's another thing. Like I've been in the back of my mind. So AKS supports the ability to log in to like kubectl using your Azure Entra ID credentials. But it's like when you set up your cluster like that, how do you configure it for programmatic access? That's what I have not figured out yet how to do. So if you just use kubeconfig, right, and for a cluster that isn't provisioned with Entra ID authentication, then you drop your kubeconfig in the right place, or you reference it, when you use kubectl, and you're jamming on your server. But as soon as you enable Entra ID authentication with your AKS cluster, your kubeconfig now has a bunch of stuff in it that says, go use this tool to log in using your Entra ID credentials. And then the question becomes, well, how can I, if I have a cluster set up like that, which is great, I think that's best practices for kind of interactive login from end users. Like, I think it's pretty sweet. Like, you could use Entra ID and you don't have to use some file, to talk to your Kubernetes cluster and use kubectl. But I want my pipelines to be able to talk to this cluster as well. I want my GitHub Actions to be able to talk to this pipeline. So, you want to be able to do that. So MR says, I'm thinking about that. So MR is like, I might be wrong, but doesn't Microsoft provide some more support or at least guidance on using Flux? Using Flux or Argo would be really cool, but obviously add scope to your work. Yeah, it does seem like the official Microsoft canon is like Flux is preferred. It seems like that. Not that Argo is like, untouchable or verboten, but it does seem like Flux, at least from a portal experience standpoint, it seems like Flux is more prevalent. I'm not sure why that is, but Maz says, regarding the module reusability aspect you mentioned earlier, I plan to use a Key Vault module to create 2 Key Vaults in different Azure subscriptions with the following code. Okay. So we got module. I could throw this up into like a temp window so that you guys can actually see it. So this is Maz's code here. He just threw this into Discord chat. Okay, so you can see how he's setting providers here for his sub 1 and sub 2. And he says, would you recommend a different approach for creating these resources using the module? Well, you got to ask yourself, do you want both of these key vaults in the same Terraform apply? Should they be in the same state file? That's question 1. Are these key vaults kind of a separate? Is the footprint for whatever these key vaults are being used for going to expand beyond the key vault, right? I'm assuming these key vaults for these subs is some sort of like shared infra for at the sub level that people that are in that sub are going to all share and use. And are there going to be other shared resources that are going to go in there? That would be my first question. And if the answer is yes, I might think about how I would broker change to those different subs in the future and bring updates to those environments and maybe have flexibility of opting not to push updates or to push updates, right? And so if you provision like this approach right here is like, all right, it's highly efficient at just pumping out key vaults to as many subs as you want, right? But it, it's like if you want flexibility and variation, you might want to have a simpler code base that's like maybe a root module that just represents like, well, what should every sub have? What should every subscription in my organization have as kind of like baseline? And then think about maybe that's what the root, you could still use a root module that provisions to all the places, right? And it could follow this format that we're looking at right here. But then it's like, it's not just like Key Vault, right? It's like, okay, subscription stuff, like common baseline subscription deployment, right? And then inside there, that would include a Key Vault, right? That would be something to think about. And then depending on how many subscriptions we're talking here, right? You might want to think about, okay, how is this going to scale, right? Okay, right now it's 2 subscriptions. Will it ever be 100? When you start talking big numbers like that, it's like, I mean, is this what is this code base going to look like when we get to that scale of an organization? And how would managing this code base look like in that case? And then you might want to think about back to, do I want to force updates, like if I change the content of that, let's say instead of using a Key Vault module, I've got a baseline subscription module that day one will have a Key Vault, but day two might have other things, right? That baseline subscription module, do I want to force updates to all of my users? So if I add something to that baseline subscription module, do I want all my users to get that update, right? And if you set up a pipeline to provision that for each subscription, right? Now each subscription has its own workspace for its baseline environment. So every subscription has its own state file, its own instance of the root module, right? Essentially. And you can use feature branches and Git flow process to manage pushing change to those environments. So that will allow you better coordination with those teams that are in those environments, because a sub can be a small place with very few people working in it, or it could be a very big place with lots of people working in it. And so if you take the approach that you're showing right here, if there's a lot of people in those subs and this infrastructure, the shared infrastructure in the sub grows and gets more complex, we probably want to have more control over how we manage that change to the teams that are operating in those subs. So that does require some additional boilerplate. Like you're probably thinking, gee, golly, Mark, that would mean I would have to have, an Azure DevOps pipeline for sub 1, sub 2, sub 3, sub 4. Yeah. And well, who's going to create all those pipelines? Well, you can check out my Azure DevOps provider, right? My Azure DevOps modules that pump out pipelines. So you don't have to go manually create these pipelines. Like we can use automation to create automation. And so if you have subscriptions that you want to onboard, you might want to have automation around that. So it's like there's sort of this vending machine that will just, okay, I need a new sub, spit one out, right? That sub needs to have these things in place day one, right? Let's have that as part of the template, and that can get updated over time so that each subscription, we can choose how fast we want to push the canonically approved enterprise, standard configuration of this stuff out to each sub. And that gives us the ability to talk to that sub owner or the various teams that might be in that sub and let them know, like, here's the changes that are coming, what kind of impact is this going to look like to you? Here's the plan for your sub and your sub only. And here's what this is going to do to your world. What do you think about that? Right. And having those conversations with the teams that operate in those subs. And Maz says, normally we use a dedicated workspace for each subscription in our pipeline. However, we now have a requirement to manage resources across 2 subscriptions using a single workspace. Well, I would ask, where is that requirement coming from? I would ask, where is that requirement? Like, is there some reason why you want to have 2, like you want to manage 2 subscriptions in a single workspace? That's what I would say. But hey guys, it's really awesome you guys popped on like kind of late in the stream. I think I got my rig kind of set up here, which I'm really excited about. This has been a lot of fun. I'm going on 2 hours, over an hour and a half. So I think I'm going to call it a day today, but really appreciate the questions and the stuff. You guys hopping on Discord and talking. Dan Kitch, I salute you. Thank you so much for being a member and supporting my channel the way that you do. Greatly appreciate it. Let me know when you have code that you want me to review. Let me know, man. I'm here, ready to help you out. and Maz and MR and George with a really cool icon. I love that. It's funny. Thanks for joining, saying hello. Hopefully, I'll see you guys next time. I think next Sunday I'll be here. But I'm going to try and start at 10 a.m. my time and kind of wrap up 11:30 my time. So do an hour and a half. And, yeah, because I got Sunday activities that I got to go to with the family. But anyways, thank you so much. And I'll see you guys next time. More content coming. Starting kind of the Entra ID series, which you saw last Tuesday, my first episode drop. I'm prepping for my Hashi talk on February 15th. I'm prepping for an Azure policy talk on February 7th at the Columbus, Ohio Azure meetup that I'm organizing. I am prepping for, actually I don't have to prep for this talk. It's a why you should do Terraform instead of ARM talk to the Azure. The policy as code is for the HashiCorp user group in Columbus. And then I'm going to do the why you should use Terraform instead of Bicep ARM with the Azure meetup on February 28th. So January, February, very busy for me. I'm also working on my book, and I'm just getting through my chapters on Kubernetes and container-based workloads. So that's pretty exciting. And I'll be working on serverless, the chapters on serverless coming up. So I'm not sure when my publisher and I are going to officially announce this, but now you guys know. Some of you guys may already know that I'm working on a book, but it's in the works, and you'll probably hear more soon. My editor keeps spanking me like, keep on schedule, let's go. And it's good. It's good. You got to have a coach behind you breathing down your neck. Otherwise stuff probably would never get done. But anyways, lots of fun stuff. Oh, I'm also taking on a Leap mentor at Microsoft. They will be starting January 16th, which is kind of a first for me. My members know how my role at Microsoft has kind of changed a little bit recently, which is kind of interesting. And this Leap program is a program for experienced hires that are out of the technology industry that want to break into the technology industry to have an opportunity at working at a big tech company like Microsoft, getting embedded on an actual product team, working on the product, in this case Azure, which is what my team works on, and being mentored and kind of trained and guided by that Microsoft product team. So that'll be kind of a new experience for me, and hopefully probably a new experience for the Leaper that'll be joining on January 16th. So hopefully it's a positive experience all around. Looking forward to it. Anyways, that's it for me. Thank you guys for joining my live stream, and have a great Sunday, and I'll stay in touch. Ping me on Discord if you want to keep talking about these subjects. Anyways, cheers. This is the Azure Terraformer signing off.